Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your client's peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your guest host, Diane Robinson, investment advisor with IP Financial Advisory Services, LLC. Today, my guest is an elder law attorney, Daniel Hill with the Hill Group, LLC. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Diane. It's great to be here.
So tell us how you got into elder law.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, Diane. I spent a long time in my legal career kind of searching for something I was passionate about. I'd basically worked with families my entire career, but most of it I had done through family law. So doing divorce, custody, things of that nature, which I will say is an important line of work. But it was hard for me to find satisfaction in it just because I had a hard time relating to some of the things my clients were going through. And quite frankly, it was a hard business model. That was one of the things you fight as a lawyer. It wasn't really until my own family went through some of the issues I help families with now until I really saw the value in what I can provide.
Good. So let me give you the first question.
Sure.
If I'm coming in to see you and I don't know much about, estate planning or, elder law, and I'm a little anxious, so what questions should I be asking you?
Well, people are anxious all the time when they meet with lawyers, and I think that's a big problem, Diane. People should feel very comfortable going to an attorney because what you're going there for is advice. There's no question that should be off the table when you have a problem your family's worried about. And that was one of the big impediments to people getting help with what I do. Elder law was kind of a mystery. When I tell people that's what I practice, oftentimes they look at me as though I'd grown a second head. They don't really know what that is. What elder law is basically estate planning, but a focus on asset protection. And primarily where we focus on protecting assets, Diane, is from healthcare costs. That's the true place where most average families risk losing everything they've built. If they end up needing long-term care in a nursing home in particular, that cost can devastate a family financially. And what that does is it's led to a lot of bad misconceptions, ones that even my own family went through, that prevent them from getting the kind of help they need, both from lawyers and from medical professionals. So what that opened my eyes to was the fact that we had to do a different business model. The old classic business model where people had to pay an attorney a consultation fee just to sit down with them and get to know them. It was it was preventative to begin with. The story that got me into doing what I do relates to my grandpa. My grandpa was a very typical guy from Johnstown, Diane. He was a guy that worked in the mill. He didn't have a whole lot, and he had a big family that he loved dearly. And my pap worked very hard his whole life to provide for them the best he could. We didn't think he ever had that much money because he didn't earn a whole lot. And like I said, he raised 6 kids. And unfortunately, when my pap and gran were older, they suffered a lot of health issues. My pap, when he turned 89, suffered a series of 3 strokes all in the same year. And that was very scary for my family because he'd always been healthy prior to that. And when you have a stroke, oftentimes it leads to things like long-term care in a nursing home or rehabilitative care. And anytime a family member hears the word nursing home, everyone gets terrified and scared and has questions. And I'm sure my pap and gran were no different. Unfortunately, I didn't do this kind of work back when they were going through these problems, and they never went and got help. They never asked questions. They just kind of tried to figure it out on their own. And what happened is my pap probably didn't get the kind of care he needed. It's that basic. He got to the point, Diane, where undoubtedly my pap would have had a more comfortable life if he was in a skilled care facility because after his 3rd stroke, he needed help with everything he did. And my family was trying to patch it together. We were trying to stop by and do the things we could to help, but it just wasn't probably enough. And we found out after my grandparents were both gone why my pap was so hesitant to get the kind of care he needed. He had a ton of money. And we didn't know he had it, Diane, because he didn't tell anybody. It wasn't money that was his. Unfortunately, it was money that he and my gram received because their youngest daughter was killed in a mining accident back in '83. Who would have thought, right? And like I said, he just wanted to save that money so it would get to her brothers and sisters. That's what he desperately wanted. And what he did, I can't make it up, Diane. He saved a bunch of US savings bonds in a shoebox. That's where he saved his money. As a financial advisor, I'm sure you think that's a great strategy, right? And after he passed away, we found over $800,000 in savings bonds. And it just broke my heart. That's money that he could have used to be more comfortable. And now knowing what I know, he didn't have to lose that money. He could have got the care he needed. He could have got benefit programs to pay for it. It really opened my eyes. I never again saw the value in what I did until I could see what it would do for a real family. And when I saw that and how it could have changed my family just to be able to get a little bit of advice, that became what turned my whole career around. It got me to immerse myself in elder law. And I'm very proud of how we do it. We pride ourselves in making sure families at least know what's going on. Of course, we sell legal services, Diane, right? That's no secret, but I don't like selling things. I like helping families. So we offer educational workshops every 2 weeks just to teach people about the kind of problems they don't even realize are there so that they realize there's ways to help families who are going through that nonsense. And we also offer free meetings to any family going through that. I just want families to understand what they're going through. So when you say what questions should be something you ask your lawyer, literally any question you're worried about. This is the first time families are going through these things. That's why they're scared. That's why they're not trusting other people. They just don't have the information or the education. And I'm sure your clients are the same way as mine. If they don't understand something, they're always going to say no. That's human nature. So I think that's what's changed how my practice is by just being more willing to give answers to people, to listen a little better, and to just kind of take some of that concern away. Obviously, I'm not a doctor who can heal their sick loved one, but if I can take away your concern about finances and legalities, you can focus on what matters.
I do agree with you. And I know when I'm talking to some of my clients, I always tell them they need a will, they need to talk to an estate planning attorney. And fortunately, most of the time they listen to me. But it's not the first time, maybe it's the second or third time that I bring it up. And
Sure.
usually it's because someone that they know or someone in their family is now dealing with that. And so they don't want their family to go through it. So I understand their hesitation. I know they want to do those things, but it's kind of daunting for some of them to go to an attorney.
Yeah, we have a bad reputation, Diane. It's been born over generations of doing business the wrong way, I think. So it was hard to make a change from that. But, once you do, and once you just trust in what you're doing, you can really help a lot of people, which is nice.
So what's the one big piece of advice you would give them?
Well, the one big piece of advice I would give everybody is, unfortunately, bad things happen to good people every day. I hate to walk around preaching like a fear monger in any way, but the truth is, at some point, we're all going to have something go wrong in our lives. It's why we buy insurance, right? It's why we save money for later in life. Well, what I do is no different. You have to have certain things in place no matter how old you are, no matter how much money you have, just to make sure that the people around you who will be helping you are going to have everything they need to do that. And I think that's a pretty basic desire for everyone. The problem, Diane, is just we don't pay attention to it because in our minds, we're all going to live forever. It's only going to happen to the other guy. Again, that's why we take so much time to try and educate folks. I try to make my presentations lighthearted for that reason too. Again, this can be daunting stuff to talk about. It's not fun to talk about death or, incapacity. So I try to make it a little lighthearted just to show people we really do have to pay attention to these things. And again, what I pride myself on is we make it easy to get these things in place. If you educate clients about why these things are important and you help them understand what these things are doing, they're very, willing to go get these things done and getting in place. But like you, it's really life that drives it, Diane. Most people who come to me are, they have questions about how to help mom or dad. We get them sorted out. And by the time we're done getting mom or dad sorted out, they look at me and they say, listen, I don't ever want this mess to happen to my kids. So what do we have to do to make sure that doesn't happen? So that's normally how I catch people. I call it the sandwich generation. They're caught in the middle. They're helping their kids and they're helping their parents. It's a lot. Being a caregiver is something that really can take a toll on folks. And you wouldn't believe how many people out there are doing it without saying a word. So again, we try to help caregivers in particular who are helping other family members find easier ways to do that. There's a lot of help out there that people aren't aware of. So we educate about government benefit programs. We try to get into facilities where we know families have loved ones that they're concerned about, just to spread the word. Again, knowledge is power, and we've kind of had that be our philosophy since we founded this place.
So, what is the one situation where it really affected you the most? I mean, you really felt it in your gut.
Two spots, it was definitely the story I'd mentioned with my grandpa. Us lawyers, we have the old saying, the shoemaker's children never have shoes. I look back at my own family before I got into this line of work and I see the mistakes they made, and it's almost embarrassing. If I'd only known what I know now back then, things could have been so different, especially with my grandfather. He definitely needed care that he didn't get. And I was also unfortunately touched with this personally on the other side of my family. My grandmother on my dad's side suffered from Alzheimer's for the last 5 years of her life. And my father and his sister were the ones that provided care, which worked out for about 5 minutes of that 5 years. It's just a really hard thing for people to go through. And my grandmother was like a second mom to me. So to see her suffer from such a horrible disease that impacts so many of my clients, I think just gave me a unique viewpoint on how families go through this. And it's way deeper than legal problems. It's way deeper than money, Diane. It's just hard to watch a family member go through something so painful. So if you can take a little bit of pressure off, like I said, and help them focus on the things that matter, you just feel like you're making a much bigger impact for a family.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with you because I know, it's pretty bad going through the process of watching someone you love die,
Yeah.
watching them linger, with dementia or Alzheimer's. And for, the family to be able to just focus on that and not have to worry about the other things is a big relief to them.
Amen.
Unfortunately, most people think that they can't afford to take those steps to protect their family and to make sure that their family doesn't have to go through the worst. So
Yeah, it's a
is
big
there,
barrier.
yeah,
Yeah.
is there any advice you have for them?
It's tough. What makes it difficult is my clients are typically handling somebody else's money. And that's just a basic thing where most people feel nervous about that. They never want to make a mistake. They don't want to waste money. And they're usually handling money for a generation that was very tight with their wallet, Diane. I come across this a lot. I do. Sometimes the help families need is expensive, but what you have to really take the time to do is show people the value of what it's going to do. There was a huge classic mistake, I think, in my industry. Lawyers would sit behind a big fancy desk and they would have the attitude of just trust me. Kind of like a car mechanic. If we don't know how you fix a carburetor, we kind of got to trust you. And we're going to pay whatever it takes, I guess, but we might not be real happy about it at the end. So, what I take the time to do is explain to people why certain things may be expensive. And if you can show them what's going into what you're doing and you're not taking money from people for something you're not doing, they usually see the value of it. You can't show it to everyone. I just had a client a couple weeks ago who really needs help with a Medicaid application. They know it, their brother knows it, and their sister knows it, but their dad doesn't want to open that checkbook. And, at the end of the day, they said, this isn't our money, it's dad's money, and you have to respect that. Again, you don't win every battle. I've learned that in life. You just have to do your best to try and show people the value of what you're doing. I also think it's important to try and keep prices reasonable in this world. I was at one time doing what I do statewide, Diane. I still have a lot of clients all over the state, but when I really wanted to focus my practice in southwestern Pennsylvania, I realized you got to serve the people who you're representing. And, most of my clients aren't extraordinarily wealthy people. They're very average families who need to make sure that dollar goes far. So I think paying attention to your clients' needs in that regard, but also respecting what you're doing and just showing people the value in it is where you find that balance. And like you said, you may lose a few on either extreme, but we find that we help most people in the middle there find that reasonable.
I find that the biggest complaint about attorneys is they don't understand what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
not talking their language, you're talking lawyer language.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big battles you have. So how do you handle that?
I think it's the most essential thing I do as an attorney. I used to be a litigator, and I was a very good litigator, Diane. I was good at handling lots of different situations in a room, lots of different viewpoints. And I realized early on that that was what a good attorney should be doing, is communicating things that people don't understand in a way they can comprehend. So I always found that to be valuable as an attorney. And when I got into this world, I really saw the value in it. I basically deal in the government program that's called Medicaid. Medicaid can be very complicated and it's full of legalese and things that don't make sense. And it interplays with something other than Medicaid that's terrible, tax law. All right, Diane. So when you're mixing tax law and Medicaid law together, for most average people, that can be like reading a phone book. It can be very overwhelming. So I have learned over the years that I've been doing this line of work, particularly, that you absolutely have to explain these things in terms that anyone can understand. The way I do it, Diane, is I tell stories. I know that may sound corny, but it's way easier to explain tax issues and Medicaid issues by telling a relatable story to someone than it is to stand there and read them guidelines from the Medicaid handbook or sections of the IRS code, for Pete's sake. So if you can relate to people in a way and use analogies to show them how things work, that's an easier way to get your message across. You'll see something sitting beside me. I'm going to kind of point out to you. You'll see a little toy wagon sitting behind me. While I do help families going through crisis situations in Medicaid, what I really try to convince families to do is to pre-plan so that they're positioned well ahead of time in the event they would ever need care. The way that I do that, Diane, as you probably know as a financial professional, is through the use of trusts. Trusts are another thing that can be a hard legal concept to teach to people because, I mean, what is a trust? It's a separate legal entity I create in a contract among three different parties. That's a little hard to teach to someone. So what I do is I break it down by using a visual aid, a little red wagon. A little red wagon is just like a trust. It's something you can put your things in. You can decide who else can play with the things in your wagon, and you can always wheel your wagon home the next day so it's waiting for you in the morning. So it's a good analogy, and I use it to teach people how revocable trusts work versus an irrevocable trust. It just really is a way to bring people in so that they understand what you're saying. So you just have to learn how to teach. I think being a lawyer is almost like being a teacher. It's why so many of us marry teachers, Diane. I'm guilty of that as well. I married to a first grade teacher, and I get all kinds of great ideas from her about how to keep people interested, how to, again, convey a complicated message to someone who may not understand that. Communication is everything with what I do, and I'll be honest, it's the secret to my success. Most of my clients that like me or leave me good reviews will always say that. Dan explained this to me in a way that I understood, and nobody else would do that. And does it take time? Yeah, it takes a lot of time. But if you take the time to do that, you end up with what I have. No unhappy clients and people that understand what they did and are happy about what they did.
So is there any example you can give us where you were really disappointed that you couldn't help someone?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Oftentimes, Dan, it comes down to that cost factor. That'll drive me crazy. I'll see a situation where I know that this is perfect for a family. It's going to do the things I'm saying, but for some reason, I just can't convince them that there's value in doing it. And I've been doing this long enough now where I've had people come in and should have planned ahead. It takes about 5 years to plan ahead for Medicaid. And I told them, look, you need to do this trust. If you do this, you're going to protect everything you own. It's going to keep the cost down if that would happen, even though it's expensive to do it now. And the guy wouldn't hear it. No, no, no. This isn't for me. I don't need that. I think you're full of it. Okay. Well, about 6 years later, that guy met with me again with his financial advisor. And this is a financial advisor I know well. I work with lots of financial professionals like yourselves because we have obviously a lot of synergy. You're helping families protect their money and grow it. I mean, we obviously live in the same world. Well, I didn't realize this guy was working with this financial advisor until he came in, and I just kind of asked, why are you guys here? And the advisor looked at the guy and he said, "Tell him why we're here." And he said, "Well, this guy's been telling me I should have been coming to you for 5 years." I said, "I told you a long time ago this. So why are we here now?" My wife had a stroke. She's sitting in a nursing home. and we need to do a Medicaid application. I said, all right, you know, I kind of had to walk him through about what was going to happen now. And then thankfully, I could still protect all his money, just a different strategy. And it was going to cost 3 times as much as it would have cost to plan ahead. And, the financial advisor just kind of shook his head. And he was the one that said the I told you so. I don't like being that guy, but I was upset by that. I didn't like that the guy didn't do this because it was too expensive.
Hmm.
And truthfully, Diane, back when I first started doing this, I had to charge almost twice what I do now to get this done. I just didn't have my process down yet. It just took my team that much longer to get it done, right? Lawyers have to go by how much time it takes us to do things. And that became a driving factor in me when I founded the Hill Group. So this entity, I used to do this, like I said, statewide. I was affiliated with other firms. But when I saw the massive need for what I do in southwestern Pennsylvania, that became my career mission. I was going to found a firm that could serve this area in an affordable manner because that was what was keeping people from doing this. It was the big city people coming in, trying to convince people to spend way too much money doing this. And I figured it out. I figured out a process where I almost cut that price in half from what I was doing it. And I very rarely get that pushback anymore. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. They're out there, but that's something I pride myself on because I just don't like not being able to get that family to see the value in planning ahead. It's nice to be able to help them out later. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to, I want to make it as easy as I can on families. And that's kind of what drives me. That's the pressure on me as an attorney. I'm always looking to get better. And that's where I think I can do it is getting better at communicating, getting better at getting this message across for people so that more ears are open to the problem.
Okay. So could you tell us a little bit about your healthcare and financial boot camps?
Yes, yes. So we are going to be bringing these back. The pandemic kind of slowed things down for a while, but again, getting to where we like to educate, there are basically 2 segments of professionals that I typically come across when helping these families. Financial professionals like yourselves, financial advisors, accountants, CPAs. And on the other side, of course, we have healthcare workers, social workers who are in nursing homes, helping families navigate Medicaid, nurses, for Pete's sake, nursing home administrators who need to learn more about elder law. What I've learned is when I'm meeting with these professionals, I tend to get the same questions, and what I ended up putting together was a nice presentation for each category that I think would really educate them about what we do. And I came up with a fun way to present this in what I call boot camps because I really wanted to entice these professionals to come in and get this education. So what I'm doing is I'm getting accredited to provide continuing education credits to those professionals I had mentioned. And we're going to offer, I'm hoping, at least 3 hours of continuing education for free so that we can do a nice half-day presentation. We try to do these presentations off-site somewhere. We try to get as many professionals together as we can. I think the healthcare professional location we have nailed down, but we're still looking for a financial location yet. But that news is going to be coming out, probably by the second quarter of next year. We're going to have those dates locked down. We're looking to do those in the fall of 2025 and then every year thereafter. We want to make it an annual event. So we're pretty excited about it. It's a lot of work, I will say, to get accredited, but it'll be well worth it, I think, because again, those are connectors, Diane. If I can teach someone like yourself about all these things, you have so many clients who probably need this help. Same thing with healthcare professionals. These poor social workers oftentimes are in the front lines of families finding out all these nightmares, and they need to know some of the basics so they can at least get them pointed in the right direction. So that's what excites us. It's just a way to kind of amplify that message we're getting across to people. And like I said, those dates will be coming out soon.
So how can someone find out about them? By going to your website?
Yes, we always have a page on our website where you can register. Like I said, it's not live quite yet because we don't have the dates nailed down, but that's how we're going to do it. And we're going to get the word out through marketing next year as well. So like I said, always check our website for any of our events. We have a community event page where we're out trying to do things in the community. We have a workshop page for our in-house presentations, which happen every 2 weeks. And we also have a off-site presentation page. So I try to do my presentations in nursing home facilities, healthcare facilities, anywhere I can really get people to listen. So our next events are always there, and you can always register at any of them. They're always free. We just like to know how big of a crowd we have coming. So that's why we ask you to register, and we send you nice reminders. We drop a pin on the day of the presentation so you know where to go. Just makes it really easy to get there.
And that's at hillgrouplaw.com.
That's correct. Yep.
Anything else you think our listeners should know or
Just get
they would
informed.
do?
Like I said, yeah, don't hesitate to find answers to questions because I promise you help is out there. Whether it's us or someone like us, if you have a family member who's going through a hard time, like I said, don't just sit on your hands. Go get the information to find out how to help.
Great. Well, thank you for being my guest today. And I want to thank everyone for listening. This has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your guest host, Diane Robinson. My guest today was attorney Dan Hill. For more information on Dan and the work he does, visit his website. Again, that's hillgrouplaw.com. And you want to give a telephone number?
Sure, Dan. Our number is 814-245-3832.
And we'll also link it in the show notes for you. So, Dan, again, thank you for joining me and have a good day.
Thanks, Diane. It was a lot of fun.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.